Hello, and welcome to the Science on the 7th live stream, a virtual space where we talk about topics related to air quality and health from around the world. I'm your host, Pallavi Pant. This is our first live stream in 2024, and we sincerely hope that you've had a great start of the year. We've got an exciting lineup of speakers throughout the year, so thank you for joining us today, and hopefully you'll continue to join us for this live stream year round. Um, the winter season is a time when we start to think about air pollution very vividly in many parts of the world, partly because during the colder winter months people want to keep their homes heated and they want to stay warm, which often means increased fuel use. And today we are diving into how air pollution impacts the lives of millions and in fact billions across South Asia, a region which is home to about 2 billion people. And air pollution levels here continue to be drastically high for much of the year. And in Pakistan, one of the countries in this region, often the air pollution season has started to gain its own name. It's called the season of smog. And to tell us more about how air pollution affects the lives of everyday people and the efforts that are underway to try and address it, we have an amazing guest today who has been thinking about air quality and climate at a broader scale in Pakistan for several years. I'd like to welcome Dawar Hamid, who is the CEO and lead analyst at Pakistan Air Quality Initiative and also serves as the country analyst at Center for Research on Energy and Clean Air. Welcome, Dawar. Really nice to have you with us today.
Thank you so much, Pallavi, and it's a pleasure to be here. Finally, getting to speak to you as well. It's our first meeting, so great to be a part of this.
Fantastic. Yeah, I'm also happy that we were able to take this beyond social media and chat with each other in person. And this idea of the season of smog, this is something that has been covered in the media, that has been talked about by people, and it's a very interesting way to think about air pollution as an issue. And as many say, a picture is worth a thousand words. So I'd like to bring up a couple of pictures that we found on social media from recent months, which tell us the story of what Lahore looked like in, I think, in the month of December, and then another picture that I took in Delhi in earlier in November. This is the reality of millions of people, and often it's hard to imagine what this might be like on an everyday basis for people who may not be experiencing such high levels of air pollution. So can you tell us in your own words what it is like to experience these levels of air pollution, to live in this constant haze and low visibility? How does that feel, and what does it bring with it in terms of experiences in everyday life?
I think at a personal level, that is something I also usually talk about is what actually drove me into this particular field. My own background is in public policy and economics, and now I've had to learn a lot of the science behind it. Uh, I wasn't really a student of science, but it happened that I personally felt a lot of the impacts. And as a student, especially in university, we started feeling this. So in schools, we remembered that Lahore used to be this place where it used to get really foggy, but we used to play football in grounds and you couldn't see one goal post from the other. But the air was clean, and this was back in 2005 or 6. But 10 years on, we couldn't really even run outdoors. And this quick change, now we know why this shift happened, and over a period of a decade. It's a bunch of things. It's energy, it's urban sprawl, it's industrialization, it's fuel use, as you've mentioned, it's energy shortages in the winter periods. It's overburdening of certain areas and regions where people use energy. At the same time, there's also this huge public health impact. Now, this is something that we are feeling really acutely this year. And over the past couple of I think 5 to 4 years, we interact with media on a daily basis during this smog season. Every day, you would get journalists telling you that this is the AQI level. What do you think is happening? What's the government's response? Do you want to say something? And every day we say the same things, and we've been saying the same thing for the past 5 years. And the journalists or the editors of these newspapers would also tell us that that this issue right now is something that we don't think that we can dedicate a lot of space in our papers, on media, on the TV channels, because certainly in a developing country context, until there is a really strong, visible impact on human lives, politicians don't care about it, policymakers won't care about it. And this one editor abruptly actually said that as long as there are no bodies on the ground, you won't see any response. But this year, this is something that I really feel strongly about. We had 300 kids die of pneumonia, and there's very strong evidence that the pneumonia, particularly this is the Lahore division, this is like at least 4 to 5 cities where it's concentrated. Now, winter is very strong up north in the country, but you're seeing all these deaths in this region, which clearly points to that the air pollution or particulate matter is what's causing the burden of disease to increase in these regions, or at least the virus to become much more stronger than it would have been in any other time. So it's for this particular region in this part of Punjab, and certainly it's spread to other cities now as well. All of the cities, the capital, Islamabad, Peshawar, even Karachi, which is a sea, which has the sea on its side, but it's still feeling the impact of the pollution, and you also see very unhealthy levels there. So it's a countrywide issue now, and we talk about South Asia, and we very well know that it's a South Asia-wide issue. So that's what where we stand right now, and that really drives us to work collaboratively and to figure out what we can do to drive changes in this region.
Yeah, that's actually really pertinent and actually similar to my experience growing up, where we used to have a lot of fog in Delhi. And if you were going to school, the school bus would go very slowly because you could see nothing in front, and then sort of become clear to people that it is not just fog, it's actually pollution that is contributing to the problem. And the issue of health is actually a very interesting topic because you probably know, in even in India, we've had a lot of calls for what is the evidence in our context on the health effects of air pollution. And interestingly, children's health impacts is one area where we have seen a lot of research in India and Pakistan and Nepal and Bangladesh, trying to understand air pollution exposures and health. And pneumonia, of course, is a very salient health outcome that continues to come up in any kind of studies. But also importantly, I feel, beyond the impacts on our health, which are absolutely crucial, connecting it back to what the editor was, saying, that this needs to become a really big issue. We need bodies on the ground, and perhaps, hopefully, we're trying to move away from that kind of a scenario. But air pollution is affecting the livelihoods of millions of people. It's affecting the budgets and what I spend every day on food versus medicine versus something else. And from having lived in the pandemic, we're all sort of familiar with the lockdowns that we went through. But for some of our listeners, it may be news that actually, both India and Pakistan have had lockdowns related to air pollution. They're called differently, but that means that people are not able to go to work. Certain sectors are particularly impacted. I'm thinking construction and smaller businesses, but also kids. Schools shut down and kids don't go to school. Many of them may end up spending their entire day outdoors and getting exposed to even more pollution than they probably were exposed to if they went to school. um, what is your take on sort of this broader impact, which to date hasn't been discussed in the same sort of breadth as the health impacts, which are extremely crucial, and that's something we work on day in and day out. But trying to link it to this broader issue of livelihoods, the like money we're spending on the issue, and where do you see some of these areas of concern in case of Pakistan?
So I think you're very right that we are having these regular lockdowns now, and it started in 2019, and and that was just Lahore district at that point, but now it's spread to 11 districts in Punjab. So it's also an issue that is growing, and as the air pollution problem reaches other cities, which are seeing similar trajectory as Lahore did, the same issues that we're seeing everywhere. Now, what the difference in, I think, what I've seen in, at least in terms of policy, is that we in Delhi, for example, there is a certain trajectory or threshold that has to touch, and then the government orders the graded action plan to come in place. But in our case, still there's this gap between data and learning what would be the ideal intervention to do. So, for example, the construction activities would shut down at a certain point in Delhi. But what is happening on our side still is that you would shut down schools, but construction projects, for example, would still be ongoing. So the data says that air quality is bad, and certainly there is a component of construction dust that adds to it. But at the same time, you're trying to see that the economic impact is minimized. So the political angle comes into play, that they say that livelihoods cannot be sacrificed, but at the same time, we're going to put a pause on schools because children coming out and playing in the grounds in their break times, or when the school gets on and off, there's this traffic congestion that adds to pollution. So they're trying to target those interventions. And it's very clear in our case that it's at least at the city level, it's transport emissions. It's certainly something that the government also realizes. So they have tinkered with the school timings as well. So we had the longest sort of school break this past, December and January. But at the same time, when schools resumed, they said that they will resume from 10 a.m. onwards. So they tried to really, differentiate the office traffic, the school traffic, and see what are the if we can lessen the impact. And it has actually during those hours, mitigated it to an extent. But this is of course something that we cannot see on a long-term basis. So it's very clear it's transport, and the emissions are caused by this particular sector, but they haven't been able to link it to the broader issues, such as what is the impact on education. We very well know that education, people missing their certain lessons, it will add on, it will compound, and it will start impacting their test scores. Similarly, livelihoods, we have a huge inflation crisis in Pakistan. So losing our day's work, losing hours of work impacts a person's ability to, really do something. And at the same time, we have this new evidence coming out that even the, day wage laborers are very, very concerned about pollution, because they will miss the work if there is a shutdown, but they will also miss the work if they're sick, because their capacity to work is similarly impacted. So they're also, trying to weigh the pros and cons of their activity, what to do or what not to do. They're trying to weigh the pros and cons if I'm going to spend 10 rupees to buy this mask on this day or not. And then they overuse that mask, they don't know when to dispose it of. So there's this huge learning curve that, of course, the public is being forced to go under. At the same time, we want the government to use evidence and data more to really connect what intervention will help at what time.
Yeah, that I think, I had not realized that the school timings were changed in response to the air pollution problem, which is an interesting measure. I think, trying to focus on the broader sectoral interventions that we need. Transportation, of course, is a big contributor there, and also trying to tinker with these types of things, which could perhaps minimize or reduce exposures, is an interesting approach. I'm really hoping that, India, Pakistan, and like South Asian countries more broadly can start to learn from the experiments that we're all doing, and find things that work best. Um, you mentioned, people in different sectors, and even day wage laborers starting to feel that air pollution is something that could be impacting their health. And I think there has been this phenomenon almost in several countries now, where people have come up and said, this is a problem. We want the government to fix it, and we're going to come together and try and deal with it. I think a beautiful example of that has been the Peshawar Clean Air Alliance. I think we have a few images if we can bring those up. So this alliance has been very interesting for me to just watch, and see it sort of grow and take shape from afar. You have been a member of this alliance, an advisor to this alliance, and I'd love to hear how this came about, and also what has the alliance achieved so far. And if you can tell us more about the people who have been a part of this alliance and who've helped move this forward.
So Peshawar is a very interesting case study even for me, and I actually worked on the source apportionment as part of this alliance as well. And Peshawar is so. I'll draw a picture that Lahore division is a city, is a region of 25 million people, very comparable to the NCR region. Similarly, Karachi itself, Karachi division is again 25 million people. These are huge chunks of population, and of course you will expect very high levels of pollution because of the industries and everything there. Peshawar itself is 4 million people, and it's sort of divided between rural segments and your urban segments. And then the what we used to call the Grand Trunk Road, the one that stretches from Kabul to Dhaka, it's built around that one road. It's surrounded by a valley, which of course causes the inversion that traps all the pollutants. But it's also the city spread is like a long oval built all around the GT road. So and at the same time, the entire province, the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province, is one of those regions in Pakistan which gets all of its energy from hydroelectric power plants. So this is a very unique context that that the power sector is clean in this region, but you don't necessarily know what are the other sources. So we set out to investigate why pollution is worsening in this region, and of course one of the key culprits is transport. But also people were concerned about small informal industries all around the city, and then of course whenever there is an economic boom, the industrialization also booms. So we see there's a period in Peshawar where initially there's a boom, the air pollution goes up, then there's inflation, it comes down, and it's following that trend. At the same time, since the power is energy is very clean, people were concerned that how what are the key causes. So there's a bunch of, I think it came about as a result of individuals who were very prominent or experienced environmentalists who had been in the city and lived their lives for the past 50 to 60 years. They were part of this forum called the Sarhad Conservation Front, but that largely dealt with forest and climate change. They had very little, sort of experience dealing with air pollution. And then on the side, there's this project called the Sustainable Energy and Economic Development Program, and these are the bunch of experts who were interacting with them. And they said that why not, at the city level, we target the biggest issue that we see. Is it water? Is it air? Is it heat, urban heat? And a lot of people, of course, said it's air pollution because they were also feeling the impacts over the past few years. So they came together. The program provided them a space and certain resources, and they sort of asked people all around, journalists, students, academics, who else is concerned. So once that had happened, it gave us an opportunity to take these concerns or their concerns to government, and at the same time start producing research outputs. And so the source apportionment was among one of those outputs, which showed that there are two things that Peshawar should be really concerned about. Number one, of course, is transport, but because it has a rural angle and it has that valley inversion that happens, there's a lot of solid fuel use that's happening, and it's untracked so far. And that's adding, especially in the winter period, when you have gas shortages and when you have people who are feeling cold and they start using wood and coal for their heating and cooking. So that was something that the residents had no idea or how it was contributing to it. So we have a clear picture now of what people need to be targeting and how it should be done. And we certainly have, there's better momentum in Shah because it's also sort of when you look at Lahore, the problems are immense. It's a huge picture. Where do you pick? But in Peshawar's case, we at least know that these are the two sectors where we can pick and see the largest shift or the earliest benefits to show up. So that's how it's gone so far, and we hope to sort of mimic the model in other cities as well.
That, yeah, I think, we sort of need to hear more about these types of initiatives, which tend to, in many ways, just democratize the process quite a bit. And I think another really excellent example from Pakistan has been the Pakistan Air Quality Initiative. So, for any of you listening in, we have a number of countries in the region. They're all at very different stages in their air quality management, and the decision making that's happening. One of the challenges in several countries, in the region has been, do we have enough air quality data? Because we haven't had historically a lot of air quality monitoring stations. That picture is slowly changing. But in Pakistan, what was interesting is I think several years ago now, one person decided this is an issue that is not getting a lot of attention. And what can we do? He brought some air quality monitors, installed them, started sharing the information, and that has really transformed into an entire organization now. So that's that sort of arc of progress has been fantastic to see. um, I think it's also a really good example of how strategic use of data and information, even if it is very limited, can help lead to broader action. So I would love to hear you tell us a little bit more about Pakistan Air Quality Initiative, and also congratulations to you and to Abid and everyone else who's been involved. It's gone from a one person effort to a fully functioning organization. So please tell us about the initiative and also what you're hoping and planning to do in the future.
So, Paki, as you mentioned, I think in 2016 or 15, I didn't know Abid at the time, not at all. I was still in university, and Abid was working in Beijing, and he had returned from there. He's based in Karachi, but he has relatives in Lahore. So, incidentally, I ended up Lahore in the smog season, and this was one of the earliest smog seasons we've had. And the Lahore High Court at that point was also hearing this petition on the EPA's incompetence of why is there no data. So Avid decided that there's no data. I have this little, handheld low-cost monitor. I'll take this to court. He brought in our friend Rafe, who was one of the lawyers on the case, and Rafe then took the, monitor to the court, and it showed 300, 400 AQI at that point. So I think that was sort of everyone was shocked. Number one, and then everyone was interested. How do we find this more information more frequently? How do we get it on our, in our computers, in our mobiles? This initial effort was just Abid installing, getting more monitors every few months, and then crowdfunding, and then slowly we also got involved in the crowdfunding business. I hosted a monitor for a couple of years. Then other colleagues also started volunteering. Some people also started donating money, and gradually you had universities and businesses also putting it up. For example, in Peshawar's case, the Bank of Khyber has put up monitors all around Peshawar on their branches. And similarly, we have tech firms in Lahore who have put up monitors on their offices. So now there is a network of around 50 monitors spread in at least the big cities. And then you also have other interested organizations coming on. We had an organization called Link Things that's putting up monitors in Karachi. And then there is another organization which works on IoT solutions, and they're starting to provide. So there's this huge change. People are very interested in knowing what the particulate levels are. Some people are also, looking at other pollutants that we usually don't talk about, such as carbon monoxide around offices and schools. What are the VOCs in a certain area? People are also looking into black carbon, or what it could be, links with climate change. So Paki in itself was largely for a long period a volunteer-driven initiative, and just the last year we sort of decided that it needs to be formalized. There's, the data that we had been gathering was losing steam. We usually volunteered ourselves, but we were also, trying to see how we can work on the more research side, but also create an organization that usually deals with the operational data collection side, dissemination side, all of that. So in that case, we decided to join hands, put up a organization together, decide who and how it would work, and how to raise finance for it, crowdfunding, and then also give it a sort of non-profit structure so it stays there. We try to get access grants to work around it, and our plans are to now to continue expanding that. So number one is to expand that network. It's 50, maybe we try to get 50 more by the coming 1 or 2 years. And then the main goals that we have in mind for at least the next 18 months is to create this repository of source apportionments for all major cities, at least 10 major cities of Lahore, and then find out What are the secondary sectors? So in urban missions, we are going to see transport as one of the key, but again, as I mentioned, that it's going to be solid fuel burning. But what are the other components in certain regions? So we're going to explore that and make sure that information is open source. Researchers can access it, policymakers can access it, media can access it, and then hopefully that drives the conversation towards a more solutions approach of what can be done in terms of policy, laws, or regulations. So that's our agenda for now, and we're definitely, going to be collaborating a lot with colleagues across South Asia. So they have, they also usually talk about Pakistan, and it's, something that they don't know much about, and then we don't know much about what is happening in the policy sphere. We've been working with Kriya on the side as well to really bring in and join that knowledge gap, and then we're also going to see what we can, sort of share with them, because one of the key things that I think focus on a lot about is that there is this going to be the discussion needs to be shifted beyond cities as well. So once we have that evidence, we're going to start looking at the air sheds as well, and that's where the regional approach is going to be really beneficial. And right now, the politicians or governments don't talk about, because the air shed or the regional approach is not backed by enough evidence. At that point, I think there will be enough evidence that we can start driving that conversation as well.
Fascinating. It's actually been very impressive because I think I've known Abid. I've only met him once, but I've known Abid for several years, and all of the work that he has managed to do to get people focused and organized around this has been amazing. And I'm very glad to see you have big plans, and hopefully that's going to work. And lead to even better results. In fact, one recent report, that the Energy Policy Institute did, which I think included the Peshawar Clean Air Alliance as one sort of one initiative, is that even relatively small investments, I should say, somewhere in the range of $50 to $100,000, are enough to actually make meaningful impact in certain locations depending on what the current state of play is. So I think there's a lot of value in taking examples like this one and thinking about where else we can make this successful. I'm glad to hear you're planning to do this countrywide. And I think in all of your work over the last many years, and in everything you've spoken about today, you have a very reasoned voice on this issue. It's not one topic, one piece. It's really thinking about the various aspects, and you clearly have passion for this work, and you want to make the air cleaner. So I'm interested in your inspiration. What gives you hope? What gives you inspiration and motivation to keep working on this?
I think it's simply what I said in the start, that we need to. There's this constant urge to have a familiar place that you've seen, which is better than what it is right now. So it's simply the Lahore that I saw as a kid is something that keeps on attracting me. That this place could be a lot better, or just be what it used to be. Of course, there are dynamics that the city is grown in a very different context now, but at the same time, you feel that you cannot, go out for a run anymore. You cannot do various activities that you were used to, and it bothers you a lot as well. And now at this point, I also have, we have my sister has two little kids, my brother has two little kids, and I see the impact on them. They go to, they've just started school, and every other week they are falling sick during this particular season. We have air purifiers throughout the house. I whenever I'm visiting Lahore, I would say that this is something that I'll buy you. You keep on running. And then there was a certain period. Right now, for example, I'm out of Lahore. There was in the previous 2 3 years, I choose or try not to be in Lahore during at least November or December. I have that freedom, but of course, other people don't. Then they have nebulizers as well. So this is something. There's a huge pharmaceutical boom in Lahore, because people, number one, are constantly buying these antihistamines and other drugs to just fight the allergies. At the same time, these devices have shown up, and they're constantly buying them, especially the people who can afford them. And then there's an industry of masks that's popped up for people who can only afford to get those. So, but this is a lot of this is very wasteful in my view. A lot of this is can simply disappear if the state and if the right interventions are in place. So that is something that we know that if we put this in place, this can happen. This could be cleaned up. But right now, the voice or target needs to be political action, and we're trying to see how to define a lot of these topics for politics as well. Tomorrow, for example, is the election day in Pakistan, and a lot of people are just focused on the economic issues, what the politicians can do for their local areas. But we're seeing that some voices are popping up who are targeting clean water and clean air as their major manifesto issues. So, and this is the first time it's happening. So, it's a shift. It will take time. At least the next 10 years, we're going to see more of this. But at the same time, to even assist these people who are becoming, activists or leading the public's own voices, we need to provide them information as well. So that is where a lot of this energy or passion comes from, and hopefully it does, in the long term, help us create that change that we're aiming to get.
Yeah, I think that piece about consistent action and trying to find a way to motivate political action is so key. And I think what I'm taking away from this conversation is that there are challenges, which I think is sort of a preamble to a lot of our conversations in the South Asian region in any case. But there are also some very innovative and interesting ways in which in Pakistan, you and others are dealing with the issue and trying to raise the profile for it. And also that I think there is hope, but that it will take time. It's not going to be a one and done situation. So, Dawar, thank you so very much for joining us today and for all of the amazing work you're doing. We will continue to follow the work that you and that Paki does in the months and years to come, and hopefully we'll collaborate on some of it. And to everyone listening in, thank you very much. We will be back on Thursday, March 7th, where we will talk about air pollution and the role that medical professionals and healthcare professionals are beginning to play around action on air pollution. So please join us then. And if you have ideas for topics that you would like to learn more about, please get in touch. Until March 7th, take care and thank you very much for joining us.